Hello everyone, this is Minicoder coming to you to talk about more basic programming. So we left off briefly going over methods, and I thought it would be well worth the discussion to talk more about objects and classes. I know we did a lot of pseudocode and all that jazz, but I also like to put some words to it because I think that there's some solid value to that. And then probably I'm going to guess next video is most likely when we're going to see code. So I'm just going to forewarn you now, if you do not learn very well from slides, you may want to skip this one. Otherwise, I think it would be definitely well worth your time if you're a beginner on object orientation or have never programmed before. I think this is a very good use of your time. So without further ado, let's jump right in. So objects, aka classes. So objects and classes are very similar. In fact, objects are classes. As I've mentioned before, classes are files, and objects usually are within one file of classes. You can put multiple objects in a class, and there are instances where I would agree with doing it. However, 9 times out of 10 I would say it is not a good idea, because usually you name the file the same as the class, which is the same name as the object. And if you put multiple objects in one class and name that class one of the objects of the 5 that you put in there, you're never going to remember 6 months from now where you put that object. So there are ways with Visual Studio to find those things, but it's not very efficient as far as I'm concerned. So let's see here. So what is a class? So I kind of went over that, but a class is often used interchangeably with an object. You could look at a class or object as a blueprint of properties and methods, aka also known as functions. They're pretty much synonymous. There used to be a differentiation between the two. In C#, there really is not, because there's a void method, but we'll go over that in detail in another class. So here's what we call a UML diagram. A UML diagram is very often used for planning out what your objects are going to look like within data structures of your system that you're going to be writing, or program that you're writing. It's also used very often in starting to create data structures in your database, like schemas. I'm not going to go over databases right now, maybe either way later or in another class or another series, but you can use it interchangeably for both. In this particular instance of a UML diagram, we are planning out our class. In this case, it's our abstract or superclass. There are often abstract classes are also used interchangeably with a superclass. What that means is that it can be inherited from other things. So you'll see this is an animal. So it is not concrete. It is something that can be defined by multiple concrete classes or objects that can inherit from this. Usually a abstract class can be inherited from other things and has very generic uses of it, properties and methods. So here you'll see there's a name property called string, common food called string, and then we have a speed of type int. So I'm sorry, these are of type strings. Generally speaking, you may want to use a decimal or a double because that will give you decimal places, and integer is only a whole number. But I'll be going into primitives in a different series tutorial. You have 2 methods, run and speak, that are relatively generic. Most animals are either going to run, maybe fly, or something like that. And they're usually going to speak, whether it's barking, meowing, crowing. There'll be some kind of speaking going on. You can define that. So every one of the a subclass, like a dog, a cat, which I'll show in a minute, can all, if they inherit from animal, get all these properties and methods for free. So that gives you the way to have a common location to not only access but update as well. You have to look at both things. If you come back to something in 6 months and you do realize speed really should be an integer, you'd rather change that in one place than 12 concrete objects that you didn't make an abstract class for. And here's what is an abstract class. So animal is obviously an abstract class, a class or object that has functionality that can be used in other classes. So a good example of that was name and speed. And the method run. Those can all be used in any other concrete class that you make that is of type animal. It's a top-level class that defines a set of properties or methods that is abstracted out to be used in other subclasses. So we kind of already went over that. And abstract classes are commonly named superclasses, which I also went over already. So what is inheritance? Inheritance is a way of allowing classes that have common features to be abstracted into this super or abstract class. By inheriting a superclass by a subclass, you can abstract and simplify your code. You're going to find a lot of terminology and things like design patterns that give you a great start. I'm not religiously following most design patterns. I kind of put them together, but design patterns give you a good structural way to start things. One of the terms that are in most design patterns by default is the dry method, don't repeat yourself. So if you were to have no abstract class and you just gave name for bird, name for cat, well, actually name's a bad example, speed to bird, cat, and dog. Well, let's say you did want decimals now. If you gave it to all three of these, you would have to change it in all three, and remember that all three use that. Otherwise you may break it in 3 different places. Or it may just not yield you the same results you wanted to get in 3 different places. So if you put speed in the animal, then as soon as you change this to a decimal, bird, cat, and dog all become decimals. And the best part about that is, as I showed you in a different tutorial within Visual Studio, now wherever your code is using this, it will break, or it could break if it wasn't an integer, or as you're typing, you want it to is not a decimal. I'm sorry. You'll know where to update that stuff, and you can also do a find, and it'll find every instance that you have of type animal. When to use inheritance? Well, whenever you have a subclass that has a common high-level relationship, and is commonly a common technique is an. You want to use inheritance. You don't want to use inheritance for everything because it bogs down your code, makes things hard to find, and I find that there's a very nice middle of the road with abstraction, and once you cross that line, it becomes very hard to find things. So an example of an would be dog is an animal. So yes, dog is of type animal, so animal would be a very good example of a abstract class. Another very good example is a vehicle. Is a car a vehicle, or is a Maserati a vehicle or a car? So you can use a vehicle as a abstract class, and then you could have a car that is also in a class that inherits from vehicle, and then you could have subclasses that inherit from car. You see how this tree gets large rather quickly, and then car can have multiple names, I don't know, a truck. I'm sorry, not a truck. A Toyota, a Mazda, and all that. And then you could have a truck that inherits from vehicle, and that'll give you a whole bunch of trucks. I'm sorry, I'm not good with cars and trucks, and vehicles, so I don't know all the names, but I think you get the idea. So that's a good example of when to use inheritance. So that is the end of the slides. I'm thinking if there's anything else I wanted to go over as far as abstraction, but I think that pretty much gets you a good idea of, one thing that would be good to know is just because you give it a name here, and I said that it abstracts it from here, you can, however, override names, and you can override methods. So in fact, methods are exactly where you want to override them, because your eat here, you may eat birdseed, you may eat catnip, you may eat dog treats, and you can override them and make each one have their own custom eat method. Now in here we have fly method for bird, which makes sense. A cat doesn't fly, well, unless you throw it really high in the air or you attach it to a rocket, which I wouldn't recommend, by the way. I think that's pretty not cool. But you get my idea. Is that when when you have these concrete classes, you want to put methods to them that are going to make them do something. Give them flight. And then you could, because you have the speed in the animal, you can now give it a speed of how fast you want it to fly. So there's a lot of power in inheritance and abstraction with abstract classes or superclasses that are very, very useful. And we're going to dive into it a little bit in the next tutorial. I'm not sure if I'm going to get to it today, but probably by the time most people read this or watch this, there will be another tutorial that is going to dive into the Visual Studio Code. So for now, have a happy holiday. It's almost Christmas, and if I don't talk to you guys again, enjoy yourself, enjoy your week, and if you like my videos, please feel free to subscribe. Give me a thumbs up or a thumbs down, however you prefer. And if you give either way, please let me know. Let me know what you like, what you don't like. It's always very helpful, and I will take everybody's comments into suggestion or under consideration, and see where we go from there. All right. So have a great afternoon, and I'll talk to you guys soon. Bye bye.